Welcome back. The situation in Iraq is quickly deteriorating, with the death toll rising as Islamic insurgents inch closer to Baghdad. There are fears of a civil war, with the nation being split into three regions. What's at stake for Iraq if things don't improve? And what can the international community realistically do to help? To discuss this, I'm joined by Bill Roggio, a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Bill, thanks for joining us. As we've just said, the situation is deteriorating. The United States seems reluctant to get involved. Other countries are filling in that gap. We have Syria, which is now bombing rebel positions. We have Russia, which is supplying jet fighters to Iraq. What are the options for the United States right now?
Currently, the United States is sending in advisors that are to coordinate, to assess the current state of the Iraqi military, provide some intelligence and coordinate any intelligence that's being gathered from U.S. surveillance planes or Iraqi planes, or any information that's coming in. It's minimal involvement. That's about as far as the Obama administration seems to want to go. Remember, this offensive by ISIS was launched on June 10th, and so we're going into 3 weeks into this conflict now, and the U.S. is not rushing to send forces in. There's no interest for the administration to re-engage in Iraq when it said that it ended the war in Iraq at the end of 2011, declared victory, and go home.
What do you make of the fact that ISIS, or ISIL as it's sometimes known, and it's now known as Islamic State, what do you make of the fact that they've declared this caliphate, this area which they occupy, which straddles, of course, both Iraq and Syria? Do you think they'd be able to control it?
I think it's going to make things a lot more difficult for the Islamic State now, as it's called. This is a move that's going to be seen as very controversial amongst allied jihadist groups or other insurgent groups, and especially the Baathists and Iraqi tribes. I mean, declaring a caliphate is, there's a whole load of precedent that's being set there, and what they're basically saying is that any insurgent group, they have to swear allegiance to the Islamic State. In the past, this has created tensions. When the Islamic State of Iraq was formed back in late 2006, this caused a lot of problems and created an opening for the U.S. for the awakenings. I think it's a sign that ISIS is, A, very confident in its situation. We'll see if they've overassessed their influence in the region. And B, I think that they're trying to capitalize on their current successes, and it's part of their PR blitz. But I think they're very serious about this. ISIS has stated that it wanted to do this. There's been a lot of signs that they were going to declare Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who's now the head of the Islamic State, declare him caliph. But I think this could have a potential to blow back on them. But militarily, they're still very effective on the ground. The Iraqi military is attempting to retake Tikrit. That hasn't gone as well as I think they thought it would. And so regardless of the establishment of the Islamic State, ISIS still seems at this point in time able to maintain its alliances with groups like the Baathists that are in Tikrit and elsewhere.
And when the rest of the world looks on this, I mean, is it a big propaganda victory for Islamic State?
Absolutely a propaganda victory. I mean, they're basically saying we're doing what other jihadist groups can't or won't, and they're saying, look, we control territory, so why don't we control territory? Our goal is to establish an Islamic State. Let's establish it today. They're saying all of these other jihadist groups, they're dragging their feet, they're finding reasons not to do it. They're trying to set themselves up. The Islamic State is trying to set itself up as the true representatives of jihadists and Muslims everywhere. And I think it's a real threat to al-Qaeda's influence in the region.
Why, in your view, has it been so difficult for the Iraqi army to launch a credible counteroffensive to what is going on?
Yeah, the Iraqi army suffers from what a lot of militaries do. It doesn't have sufficient air support. Its logistics are poor. Its ability to resupply in the field and provide medevac. The morale of the troops is not so great without having these combat enablers. And I think this is the real mistake of the U.S. withdrawal. What the military wanted was to keep about 10 to 15,000 troops in country, the U.S., after the end of 2011. and they could have provided the things that the Iraqi military needed, the coordination, the training, the logistics, the air support, the intelligence gathering, and even airstrikes. This is, what you have with ISIS is you have a group that's moving across open desert in large convoys that are often clearly marked as jihadist groups. They're flying the flags, they're driving in technicals to pick up trucks with heavy weapons mounted. They're perfect game for airstrikes. And the U.S. could have provided this. The Iraqis don't have the capabilities to do this, or they would have done so.
And what do you make of these political moves to try and defuse the situation there? You got the religious leader, Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, who's now saying that the government must announce the name of a prime minister, a president, and a speaker as soon as possible, before July 1st, which is Tuesday, to try and decrease tensions there. But the prime minister, the current prime minister, Nouri al-Maliki, doesn't seem to be moving too fast to do that. So is there any hope that there will be any kind of political solution?
It's difficult to say because we're not privy to what's going on in the backroom dealing. But Maliki has proven to be extremely adept at navigating these types of political problems. Keep in mind, in the prior election, he came in second, his group. Alawi was actually supposed to form the government, but he forced the judiciary to side with him and allow him to form the government. Nothing when it comes to politics in Iraq happens quickly. They take months, sometimes a year, to form a government. And, I think it's asking quite a bit for Iraqi politicians to solve probably the biggest political crisis since the formation, the new Iraq and elections in 2004, the biggest political crisis it's experienced, to solve this in days when it's taken months and years, and even a year in the past to solve these type of problems.
So you've got a big political crisis there in Iraq, which poses a major challenge. What about the United States? If it decides to sit this one out, I mean, what kind of a security challenge does it pose for the United States?
Oh, the Islamic State of Iraq, or the Islamic State as it's now called, it's no secret that they want to conduct attacks against the U.S. and U.S. interests in the region. I mean, this is a group that's fought the United States since 2004. Its leader has threatened to continue to conduct attacks. Right now, it's focused locally, but keep in mind, it's running training camps in both Iraq and Syria. It has scores, if not hundreds, maybe even thousands of foreign fighters within its ranks. So those are passport holders. And believe me, U.S. and European intelligence doesn't know everyone who has entered Iraq to fight for the Islamic State. And keep in mind, this has always been the MO of al-Qaeda. They focus most of their efforts on local insurgencies, perhaps 95, 98%. They only siphon a small amount for external attacks. That insurgency serves as the breeding ground, and it acts as a selection process for them to get recruits to conduct attacks overseas. When you have thousands and tens of thousands of fighters going through camps, you've just increased the number of potential recruits to conduct attacks against the West.
Bill Roggio, thanks for joining us, sir. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. We would love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and story ideas to theheat@cctv-america.com. And now you can listen to CCTV America programs 24/7 from anywhere in the United States by simply calling 231-460-1199. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for listening.